I couldn't stand the thought of being stuck with a woman who had a huge pregnant belly, making me raise the child alone. His eyes showed disgust, and a big smile appeared on his face, knowing this day would come. Even though I saw it coming, I quickly went to my room and came back with a document. I handed the divorce papers to Paul. His face twisted in shock. "What the hell? What's this all of a sudden?" he yelled. "Well, it was your idea. Now sign it quickly." "I'll submit it tomorrow," I said firmly. His face turned red with anger as my words hit him hard. "Watch closely. I'll make you regret how you've treated and looked down on me all this time," I declared. "My name is Lisa. I'm a 28-year-old housewife. Until 3 years ago, I worked for a mobile company. I met Paul Walter, my boss, when I was 25. We quickly fell in love and got married. Paul, 4 years older than me, was very reliable, especially when teaching me the job as a newcomer who didn't know much. I was very grateful for Paul's clear instructions. We became friends and often went out to dinner. When he asked me out, I was thrilled, especially since I had never dated anyone before. It's embarrassing to admit, but as a cartoon enthusiast, I was always more interested in 3D characters than real men. However, seeing my high school and college classmates getting married, I started to feel the pressure. When I fell in love with Paul, I secretly promised myself it would be my first and last love. So when we started dating and got married a year later, I was overjoyed. I was extremely happy. Paul was good-looking and popular among our female coworkers. I was proud to be his wife, and many congratulated us, saying things like "Congratulations" or "I'm jealous, but I wish you happiness." I was filled with joy and couldn't imagine what was coming next. "You're quitting your job," Paul said. "You're married to me now, so you'll quit your job, right?" I informed them yesterday. The day after we registered our marriage, Paul surprised me with this news. "I've always wanted my wife to focus only on household matters. Don't worry, I can support both of us with my income," he added. "But this is so sudden. You never mentioned this before," I replied, shocked. Paul had never talked about me quitting my job before our marriage. I had taken my current job based on my father's recommendation, and leaving without notice wouldn't be right. I wanted to explain this, but Paul's eyes silently warned me not to argue. Instinctively, I kept quiet. "I should have told you, but it's done. Starting tomorrow, you don't need to go to work. I'll handle the handover," Paul declared. The news about starting tomorrow was so abrupt it made me feel dizzy. However, Paul's words were firm. Since he had been my boss, I couldn't oppose him. Even though I had to leave my job without a proper goodbye, I was determined to make our marriage work. Paul had entrusted me with household duties, and I wanted to meet his expectations. I worked hard at household chores, preparing meals and focusing on Paul's favorites. Although Paul ate without commenting on the taste, I longed for a word of appreciation. After quitting my job, I was no longer recognized by anyone. One day, Paul asked, "Is my jacket clean? I have an important meeting tomorrow." "Yes, of course," I replied, seeing his domineering side with some old-fashioned views. I reminded myself how lucky I was to have married him and tried to meet his expectations. With no personal income, living normally meant relying on Paul. Our relationship often felt more like that of an employer and housemaid than a husband and wife. Our married life was generally smooth until one day when I fell ill and couldn't get out of bed. I felt very tired and weak. I thought I would catch up on housework the next day. Paul entered the bedroom and angrily asked, "What are you doing? Get up and make some food," as he kicked the blanket off me. "I'm sorry, I'm feeling unwell. Can you manage something for yourself today?" I explained, hoping for understanding. Instead of nodding or comforting me, Paul frowned and said, "You don't work, yet you're lying down just because you feel a bit sick? Pathetic. Get up," and kicked me again. In disbelief, I got up from the bed. I never thought he would demand housework from his sick wife. I had never imagined he would be like this before we married. Maybe it was my fault for not seeing it, but it was too much. I found myself doing chores while tears streamed down my face. Several days passed, and my health showed no signs of improvement. Then I realized I had missed my period. Panicking, I rushed to the drugstore to buy a pregnancy test. When I tried it, the result was positive. Overjoyed, tears flowed naturally, and I decided to share the news with Paul when he returned from work, lifting my spirits instantly. The day Paul came home after midnight was the day I chose to share the news. However, when he entered, the smell of alcohol made me nauseous. His face was flushed, and he staggered as he walked. It was surprising how much he had drunk, especially without notifying me. Even though I had prepared dinner, I wanted to share the news of my pregnancy with Paul quickly. My excited emotions surged, and I told my intoxicated husband, "I haven't been to the doctor yet, so it's not confirmed," I began eagerly. However, Paul's face darkened as he responded, "A child? What have you done?" His tone was harsh and unlike anything I'd ever heard before. "I don't want a child." "Damn, this is the worst. If you're going to have it, raise it yourself," he said. His harsh words shocked me. He rudely stripped off his clothes and headed to the bathroom. It was unbelievable. I couldn't understand why he would make such irresponsible comments about our baby instead of being happy. The happiness I had felt moments ago was immediately replaced with deep sorrow. Why would he say such things? He had never mentioned not wanting children before. We hadn't even been using contraception, so I naturally thought we both wanted children. As I hung Paul's jacket and was about to take his shirt to the washroom, I noticed something else. A piece of paper had emerged from the pocket of his dress shirt. I could tell it was a receipt because of its texture. At first, I thought it was just a receipt from tonight's gathering, and I was about to throw it away, but then I saw the name of the place. "Is this a motel?" My hand holding the receipt trembled. It was indeed a motel. The shock of this discovery weighed heavily on my heart. Why doesn't Paul love me? Isn't marriage supposed to be between two people who love each other? We've only been married for just over a year. How could this be? I had been lost in imaginary romances for years, never truly engaging in a real relationship. I couldn't accept this harsh reality immediately. However, the idea of Paul cheating began to make sense, and many pieces fell into place. Had Paul been using me from the very beginning of our marriage? Was he genuinely in love with the person he was cheating with while I was just a convenient servant? All these doubts swirled in my mind. Was that why he reacted so harshly when he learned of my pregnancy? As I grappled with these thoughts, nausea set in, and I became convinced something was wrong. Yes, there's no doubt now. Perhaps the reason he made me quit my job was that his mistress worked there. Everything seemed to make sense now, as if he had married me for stability and not love. The line between reality and my imagination became blurry. Still, there was no denying the heartless words he had thrown at me after learning about my pregnancy. That day, I decided to gather evidence of Paul's infidelity. From then on, his cold behavior towards me was undeniable. It was as if he couldn't forgive me for becoming pregnant. Despite knowing that I was suffering from morning sickness, he would deliberately eat smelly foods near me and nitpick my housework, forcing me to redo tasks. My pregnant body had to endure a lot, and my heart was heavy. Despite this, I continued to investigate his affair. Paul never parted from his cell phone, even taking it with him to the bathroom, making it impossible for me to sneak a peek. When I secretly entered Paul's room, it was neat and tidy, with nothing incriminating in sight. He was meticulous at work, and his desk was always in perfect order. I realized it would be challenging to catch him off guard directly. I often checked Paul's pockets for evidence like receipts, but my investigation was difficult. I thought about hiring a detective, but didn't have the money. While I was deep in thought, I received an unexpected phone call from my father. "Hello, it's me, your dad. How are you?" he asked. Surprised by his call, considering his busy schedule, I replied, "Dad, What's going on? Aren't you busy with work? My employees have been doing well, so I'm not that busy, he explained. My father, the CEO of a company in France, was always a workaholic. I didn't have many childhood memories of playing with him, but I respected his dedication to his job. His unexpected call left me curious about the purpose. So, what's happening? I asked. My father proceeded to reveal a shocking truth. Is that really true? I asked in disbelief. Yes, he's not the type to lie. I want you to believe me, my father reassured me. Initially in shock and unable to respond, I felt a mix of anger and frustration as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Thank you, Dad. I'll do my best, I told him with gratitude before hanging up the phone. My investigation was finally paying off, but the newfound knowledge also stirred up feelings of anger and frustration due to the ongoing tension between Paul and me. Paul continued to be distant even though I was pregnant. Each time he acted this way, I harbored a deep hatred towards him. Months passed, and our relationship remained strained. Eventually, an event occurred that shattered our life. At last months pregnant, I was always cautious around Paul, living in constant fear. I tried to avoid him, leading a quiet and stifled life. One day, I served dinner as usual. When Paul returned home, we sat at the dining table. As I quietly ate, Paul suddenly slammed his fork down. "What is this? It's tasteless," he exclaimed, throwing the food I had prepared onto the floor. Baffled by his outburst, I tried to comprehend the situation. The anger at having the meal I had cooked discarded before me began to build up inside. "I've been contemplating this for some time, but recently you've been complaining about the taste of the meals," I said. Paul criticized my cooking, saying it was tasteless. Since becoming pregnant, I had been using less seasoning to make healthier meals. This was only temporary until the baby was born. If he found the food bland, he could have added some salt himself. Why did he have to throw the meal on the floor? I was about to complain when Paul sneered and said hurtful words. "I don't want a woman with a belly like a monster. You have to raise the kid by yourself," he said, looking at my swollen belly with malice and a nasty smile. I had always feared this day might come, even though I hoped for a different outcome. Swiftly, I went to my room, retrieved a document, and returned to present it to Paul. "Fine. Here are the divorce papers," I said, thrusting the prepared documents in front of him. Paul's face twisted in shock. "What the hell? What's this all of a sudden?" he stammered. "Well, it was your idea. Now sign it quickly. I'll submit it tomorrow," I responded. In reality, I had been contemplating divorce since I began suspecting Paul's infidelity. However, with a child on the way, I was unsure if I could support myself. But now I had a different plan in mind. My resolve seemed to provoke Paul. His face turned red with anger. "Just watch. I will make you regret every moment you looked down on me and controlled me. Do you think you can survive without me? You have a baby to care for, and you'll regret it," he threatened. My determination was unshaken. "I'll be fine." "Don't worry about me," I assured Paul. Perhaps irritated by my confidence, he snatched the divorce papers and began to fill in the blanks. "Here you go. If this is what you wanted, it's yours," he said. "Thank you," I responded. Paul probably didn't think I would actually submit the divorce papers, as he handed them over without a fuss. The following day, I promptly submitted the divorce papers and left the house. I knew he would be surprised when he returned from work to find out. After that, I moved to my parents' home, primarily due to my father's return to the UK from France and his suggestion that I stay with them. It was the right decision at the time. I was fed up with my life with Paul and deeply thankful to my father. On the day I left our home, I received 3 calls from Paul, but I ignored all of them. Eventually, he stopped calling. It became clear that I meant very little to him. He was probably content with his mistress and might even remarry soon. I decided to move on from Paul. 5 months passed, and I had a baby who was born safely. I was now living happily with my parents and my baby. While I was enjoying this peaceful life with my family, Paul called again. I ignored his calls at first, but after several persistent attempts, I had no choice but to answer. "Hello, what do you want now?" I said, wary of his tone. "Hey, what's going on? Why were you on that show? And since when were you the daughter of a CEO with millions of dollars? I never knew that." Paul's voice boomed with surprise and anger. It turned out that Paul had seen a TV show that was broadcasted after I returned to my family home. I had received a request from a TV station thanks to my father's role as the CEO of a renowned global tech company. The show featured the lavish lifestyle of the CEO's family. Producers had come to our house and filmed our family's lifestyle. During the TV show interview, they discussed our family's wealth, mentioning a rough estimate of $25 million. I never imagined Paul would see that show, but the power of television is truly something. "Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you that I have an asset of $45 million due to an advanced inheritance. That's why I was able to divorce you." Yes, my father informed me about the inheritance, which gave me the confidence to live comfortably even after divorcing you. Upon hearing this, Paul's reaction was immediate, and he was furious. "What? That's dirty. Why didn't you tell me about this before? Half of it is mine, right? Give me the money now," he demanded. I calmly responded, "Just as I suspected, after seeing the show, all you could think of was getting money from me. Gifts from parents are not included in property distribution. Are you forgetting your own mistakes?" Paul was puzzled and asked, "What are you talking about?" I continued, "I'm tired of your anger, Paul. You called me yourself. You should know you can't blame me for what you did. You cheated, didn't you? With your new wife, who's a junior from your company? You started dating her even before our marriage." Paul was clearly shocked by the information I got from my father. I finally had the upper hand. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? My father has many contacts in your company, and one of them informed me about your affair. I've never mentioned it, but I'll be demanding child support." Paul, still in denial, protested, "Stop kidding. Why should I pay child support? It's all because of you, right? You got pregnant on your own and slacked off with household chores. It's all your fault." Hearing Paul blame me without apologizing for his own mistakes was beyond belief. I couldn't believe I was ever married to someone so lacking in common sense. I truly felt it was the right decision to leave him. "Paul, I'm broke. My wife spent all the money I earned, and now I'm in debt," he pleaded. Hearing Paul's pitiful excuse, I went from anger to sheer disbelief. I never wanted to deal with such an unreasonable person again. With that thought in mind, I firmly gripped my phone. "What are you talking about? Do you even realize how ridiculous you sound? I never want to deal with you ever again. I'll have my lawyer handle the matter of child support. Never call me again, and you will not see the child anymore. Goodbye." "Hey, wait," he called out, but I quickly hung up the phone. Afterwards, I blocked Paul's number and took a deep breath. It's over now, right? I won't get any more calls from Paul. I no longer want him disrupting my peaceful life. Just then, I heard my baby crying from the other room and rushed to soothe the baby. It turned out that he began paying child support every month. According to a former colleague, Paul claimed that the woman he remarried was quite a spendthrift, and he had to cover his current living expenses with debt. It seemed that because of these circumstances, Paul had tried to get a share of my inheritance by calling me. However, Paul didn't get a penny from me. Now, his expenses were greater than his income, and he was struggling. Either he felt things were falling apart, or he couldn't stand being looked down upon by his colleagues. What's more, he made the mistake of starting his job search only after leaving his current company. This resulted in him being forced into a life of poverty. Hearing this from a colleague didn't move me at all. I thought he deserved all the hardships. The harsh words and cold demeanor he showed me will never fade from my memory. I sincerely hope he gets what he deserves. Meanwhile, I'm enjoying being a parent with the help of my parents. My baby is growing up healthy and happy. I feel supported and loved in my family's home, and I no longer have to worry about financial issues. My father, who is a successful CEO, mentioned that he wants to pass on the company to me. This news was both surprising and motivating. I realized that I needed to prepare myself for the responsibilities that would come with running a company. My father has always been a hardworking man, and I wanted to make him proud. So I started learning more about the business, taking on small tasks to understand how things work. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to succeed. Living with my parents has given me a chance to rebuild my life. I feel more confident and ready to face the future. My father's faith in me has inspired me to aim high. He believes in my abilities, and that belief has become a source of strength for me. Every day, I work on balancing my role as a mother and my preparations to take over the company. It's challenging, but I find joy in every moment. My baby's laughter and my parents' support keep me going. I am grateful for this second chance at life, away from the toxic relationship with Paul. I often reflect on my past with Paul. His betrayal and cruelty hurt deeply, but they also taught me valuable lessons about strength and self-worth. I have grown from that experience and emerged stronger. I am now focused on building a bright future for myself and my child. The pain of the past is slowly fading, replaced by the hope and excitement of what lies ahead. I am determined to create a happy and stable life for my child. With my family by my side, I know I can achieve anything I set my mind to. Looking back, I see that leaving Paul was the best decision I ever made. It allowed me to find myself again and to discover my true potential. I am no longer the scared, uncertain person I once was. I am a strong, capable woman ready to take on the world. In the end, I hope Paul realizes the consequences of his actions. As for me, I will continue to move forward, embracing the opportunities that come my way and making the most of every day. I am ready for whatever the future holds, confident in my ability to overcome